Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers. This is Zach here with secretsoflongevity.com. This video I'm going to do on the radiation issue that's occurring with the recent disaster in Japan, both with the earthquake and consequently what's going on with the nuclear reactor. I've been following a few different sources that are talking about some of the stuff that's going on there, and as far as I can see, and I'm not looking at exactly the sources of people who are doing the radiation testing, but places like Natural News and other things are predicting that this is going to be worse than Chernobyl, because it's already, I believe the radioactive iodine output has already reached like 74, going on 80% of what Chernobyl was, and the other forms of radiation from other things are around 60 or more percent of the output per day that Chernobyl was causing or releasing at its time. So the other thing we have to look at is also the amount of fuel that's being burned at the reactor. That would give us an idea of how long this could go on for, or how intensely it could increase. And I believe the amount of fuel that's at the Fukushima reactor is 10 times that Chernobyl had. So we're looking at some pretty intense problems that could occur, that could come up as a result of this. I'm almost certain it's going to be worse than Chernobyl, which is horrendous and awful that this is happening, even with all the advancements we had in this technology over the years. But it's just what's happening. We could get caught into how it could have been prevented, but we have to focus on where we're going in the future. And personally, I'm in a place in sort of eastern Canada, central eastern Canada, in Ontario, surrounded by the Great Lakes, where I'm pretty comfortable where I am. I don't feel I'm in danger of a massive amount of radiation. Of course, I'm sure some of it's going to get over here. But anyone on the west coast of the US and Canada, and even probably down towards Mexico, are going to be hit with much higher radiation levels as that travels across the ocean. And there are definitely some things that I'd recommend for everyone around the world, but it's almost more critical for those people in those areas, especially Japan and obviously Asia on the other side of Japan, going westward from Japan. So probably the number one thing is to get tons of kelp into your body. I know with the advent of this, there's going to be a lot of products that are selling out, such as the iodine, etc. Hopefully there's going to be lots of kelp. The source that I'm going to link to below this video may be sold out by the time in the next week or so, just because of all the intensity around this. I hope there's enough for people to get. Look for it everywhere you can find it and stock up. Look for kelp in your local health food store. Sometimes you can find it in bulk, and you can just put it in powders in a bag and take that home with you. Probably wouldn't need more than a pound, because that's tons. I get it usually in a little bag from my health food store, and just use it as you've seen in past videos. I sprinkle it on almost everything. So it works up to about a teaspoon per day. And there's about 4 milligrams of iodine per teaspoon. And ideally you want to get about 5 per day to fully load up the thyroid and prevent your body from picking up radioactive iodine. However, you might want to even go a bit beyond that to really get the optimal amount. So you could also take capsules to boost that up, because there's only so much iodine you can put into food, because it starts to get, you can actually start to taste it after you get past a certain amount you're putting in there. So putting it in your food liberally, taking capsules if you need to, especially if you're on the west coast. If you're taking that much, I personally don't think you need to take nascent iodine on top of that. However, having that on hand can be beneficial as well. I'm not going to link to that just because that's not a product I would recommend, but if you have it around you in a health food store, pick some up and have it on hand. Because if this gets worse, which it surely is, you're going to be needing more of this, just because of the exponentially growing output of radiation. I just checked Mountain Rose Herbs, and it actually is out of stock of kelp, but go down there, check below. They might be getting in large shipments just to replenish their stock, so it could be back in stock anytime, so check that link below. They also have other seaweeds that I highly recommend stocking up on, whether it's dulse, nori powder. Now, nori is going to be from the area around Japan where it's going to be exposed to the radiation. However, the nori flakes that they have in stock will have been harvested long before this disaster occurred, so that's going to be safe to use for now. But down the road for the next couple of years, we're going to want to avoid seaweeds that we know are from that area of the world. So Dulce, which is from the east coast of North America in the Atlantic, largely it's harvested from there. That's going to be safe to take. So is Irish moss. So is bladderwhack. The nori is going to be iffy because it's from that part of the world. Laver is going to be okay to take. Kelp is great, and you can look specifically for what region it's from, and hopefully places start carrying lots more of it because it's out of stock in most places I've looked. But definitely check your local health food store and stock up on that if they have it there. Something I want to bring people's attention to, and this is just sort of to make you feel better, it has nothing to do with Japan, but over in Germany, and I'll link to this article below, they've just announced that they're going to be shutting down all their nuclear reactors within a couple of years. They had been on schedule to do it, I think, within 12 years or so. But after this disaster, obviously, it spurred them to increase that. And they're converting totally over to a clean, totally clean. So yes, nuclear is clean, but it's not safe in that regard. So totally clean, totally safe, energy-producing energy sources in the next couple of years, which is great. It's going to be a great example for the world, and I think that can be something that can lighten people's hearts in the wake of this tragedy that's going on. The other thing that's really cool is someone named Ray Kurzweil. Some of you may have heard of him before. He's a futurist and an inventor who's made a lot of predictions, over many hundreds of predictions that have been accurate about both technological and social things to occur. I think he predicted that the Berlin Wall would fall before it did, and he also predicted a variety of other things, such as the rate at which certain technologies advance. And he's been right about most of them, even all of them if I'm correct. So he is one of the first people who's made the statement publicly that humans are going to be living forever within a matter of 60 years tops. And so his work has sort of spurred on this whole anti-aging movement, which is really looking into nanotechnology, manipulation, genetics, and personally, having looked at a lot of this information myself, I don't think it's all using the best modalities available, and I'm going to wait till other people have tried it to see if it works. So things like the sort of pharmaceutical type therapies they're going to be using to try and alter genes might not be the first thing you want to jump to, but things like nanotechnology, cloning, or getting stem cells from your own body and creating tissue in a culture that you can then put back into your body, so they can already make skin that's identical to your own body, grow that in addition, and use it if you've been burned. They've had successfully recreated bladders and put that in people, ears, put that in people, or put that on people, and as it gets better and better, they're going to get into more complicated organs, eventually doing things like the stomach, the liver, and eventually the heart and brain, which would be amazing. So we basically can have an endless supply of replacing our body parts, and you can definitely live much longer if that's possible, because of the implications of that being superior to getting an organ from someone who just died and your body's trying to reject it. So that's going off on a bit of a tangent, but basically Ray Kurzweil was predicting this stuff many years ago, and he's now predicting that solar energy is going to take over as the world's main power supply. And most experts are saying, solar will never be there because it makes up less than 1% of the world's energy use. So the world's so energy intensive in terms of its usage that we need all these things like nuclear and coal to meet our energy requirements. But he says that technology, and specifically solar, doesn't just grow bigger every year by an increment amount. It actually doubles every 2 years. And this can be seen with the advancement of computer processing speeds and other things like that. So he says that in 16 years we're going to have enough, or good enough technology with solar panels to be able to replace all the nuclear power plants, all the coal power plants, and all that. So basically, going by that model, you can think if we're less than 1% now, and it's doubling every 2 years, in 2 years it might be above 1%, in 4 years it might be 3 or 4%, and if you just keep following that, in about 12 years we have a quarter of the world's energy needs being met by solar power, and we can start to shut down these nuclear power plants, these coal power plants. In 14 years it's going to be 50%. In 16 years it's over 100%, and that's really exciting. it might be up to 18 years, considering the world's power usage is going to also increase. We're going to need more power during that time. But it's still very positive in this light of what's going on. People are sort of going about with a lot of fear mentality. I think it's good to focus on these stories that are very hopeful, and I've linked to that story again below to read more about that prediction. Some other strategies I think people should definitely look into, and a lot of this stuff is selling up fast because people are recommending this, is things like the zeolites. I'll link to that below, but again, it's probably sold out. And zeolites obviously binds to any sort of radioactive compound, toxic compound, heavy metal, carries that out of the body. Chlorella is excellent, although that's more for heavy metals, but the chlorophyll is going to be very good at boosting your body's ability to handle this stuff. I take chlorella every day now. I'm taking about almost up to a tablespoon of the powder. Spirulina, again, it's not anywhere near as high in chlorophyll as chlorella, but getting that in as well could be beneficial. You just want to make sure these algae aren't coming from Japan. I mean, right now, if they came from Japan, it's going to be fine. But say 2-3 years down the road, even 1 year down the road, you want to not be getting Japanese source for this. Using any of the seaweeds is great. I already mentioned that they have iodine, which helps protect the thyroid gland, but they also pull radiation and radioactive compounds out of the bones of the body. So that's something that not many people know, is that seaweeds actually pull strontium, radioactive strontium out of the bones, I believe some other types of compounds, and then they bind to them and carry them out of the body harmlessly. So seaweeds every day, maybe 2 or 3 different types. Kelp is number 1 in terms of having the highest iodine content, probably 10 times more than any other seaweed, but also the other ones are going to have that other radioactive compound scavenging quality to them. If you're really serious about your health and you have the means to, and you live on the west coast of North America, I'd highly recommend moving somewhere else. That's pretty intense, but now's the time to do it while you might still be able to sell your house. Or maybe it is actually going to be easier in a few months when the media stops focusing on this, and people will feel more inclined to get back to life as normal, even though that's probably when it's going to be accumulating in these areas and you might want to look at moving somewhere else. Same goes for if you're living on the far eastern side of Asia, the side closest to Japan. If you're living in Korea and that part of China, etc., you might want to consider actually moving somewhere else. And that's pretty intense. That's a big life change, but it depends on where your values lie in terms of how much you value your health and preventing these things from accumulating in the body, which can be quite difficult, and removing from the body once they've accumulated there. Another great thing, which has been talked about by a few other experts, is ginseng, both American and Chinese, and probably Korean as well. You can find links to that below. Ginseng's great for, again, binding to radioactive compounds and bringing them out of the body. And it's got a number of other health benefits which are well known about ginseng. It really is a whole body tonic, and if you tend to run a little hot, you might want to try the American. If you tend to be sort of maybe a little past 30 and you run a little bit cool, or even around neutral, you'd probably do fine with the Chinese ginseng. If you're very cool, you could probably do the Korean, which is the hottest. In my mind, Chinese is probably the best to take, but the American is great too. But if you're sort of battling excess phytoestrogens from the past in your diet, or xenoestrogens, the American ginseng is a source of phytoestrogens and does have that sort of estrogenic quality to it, which might be something you want to avoid if you're looking to optimize that. If you don't have any other phytoestrogens in your diet, just a few from American ginseng is going to be fine. But, you know, if you've been eating soy for years, flax for years, green tea, red wine, tons of beans, tons of grains, then you might want to focus on the Chinese ginseng, which is more testosterone producing and anabolic. So that kind of gives a very basic number of things to look at. I don't want to get too focused on the products because I think it's mostly about lifestyle. Being active helps, obviously, sweat, and sweat's going to carry things out of your body. Making sure you have proper bowel movements and continual urination by drinking water. It's good, healthy spring water throughout the day is great. Spring water is going to be some of the only water left on the planet at this point after this nuclear disaster that's not going to have nuclear contamination to it. So look at using true spring water from a spring that you've located in your vicinity. So look at findaspring.com to find something like that. I've got a link below to an article I've written on water, which talks about how important water is, but then about halfway through the article, it's a very long article, talks about why spring water is the best, and if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out. And of course, below that, I've also got a link to findaspring.com. That's a lot of information for you guys. Check it out when you get the chance to. All the links below, and with that, I'm going to say take care and embrace life without limits and without fear regarding this disaster over in Japan.